guys, so today I have a little late Valentine's Day look for you. I hadn't done one in I think a couple years at least, so I thought it was about time. This was a really fun one and I hope you guys like it. I did make a face chart for this look, so I've got that in front of me, and I'm starting out with a pinky mauve eyeshadow on a small detail brush to map out and outline where I want all the patches of skin to be. For the most part, these are just random shaped pieces that I felt like looked good on me, but I did want to incorporate a couple hearts into it, so I created one around the eye and in the center of the chest as well. This is just a rough sketch, and these lines don't need to be perfect and even anyways, so if you have some mess ups, no biggie. These days I've been preferring it to map out with an eyeshadow rather than a liner or body paint because I find it easier to just quickly rub away if I make a mistake. I decided to start with just the face, so once everything's outlined, I'm going in with this salmon cream color and I'm applying that inside the entire heart-shaped area using a small flat brush. I wanted to have a pinky red color scheme for Valentine's Day, but you can really do any combination of colors that you want to, and I would love to see what you guys come up with, so if you do recreate this, please tag me, I want to see it. And the next color I'm going in with is a super bright pink, kind of magenta cream color, applying that to the patch covering the nose and chin, but again, you can place your colors however you'd like to. Next is a bit of a darker pink shade, also a cream color, and I'm using flat brushes for all these areas so I can get nice and close to my outlines. Then the last color I'm going in with is a red cream color. You can of course use water activated body paints to fill in all these shapes as well. I typically prefer to work with cream for the face especially. I'm then blending any creasing away around the eye, then generously powdering everything with a colorless setting powder to set that cream in place. I'm using a big powder puff initially, then switching to a small face brush to get into the tighter areas and then swipe away the excess. Moving on to the eyes, I'm using a deep red shadow and applying that to the inner and outer corners of the top lid using a small angled fluffy brush, then blending it out and building up the color to really darken. At the inner corner, I'm blending up toward the brow and into the inner socket area, then into the crease and out into a super soft cat eye shape, and then along the lower lash line as well. I'm then blending a brighter red eyeshadow kind of along the edges of the darker red to help blend and fade out the color, as well as just lightly blending that onto the center of the lid. Keeping with that bright red eyeshadow, I'm shading along the inside edges of the heart shape to start adding some dimension to the piece. I'm applying the darkest right along the line and then fading in toward the center. I'm doing the same to the other pieces using the darker red shade for the dark pink and red areas. I decided to add in some uneven shading by stippling and smudging the shadows a bit as well. And then a dark plum shade for the bright pink area. I also used that plum shade to contour under the lower lip. I'm then applying the red eyeshadows to my other eye, just the same as I did on the first eye. I didn't quite like how this little red piece was sitting as is, so I decided to bring it up a bit higher onto the cheek. Again, I'm using the mauve eyeshadow to line about where I wanted it, then filled in the empty space with the red cream color, trying to blend it down into that red that was already there. Then I set it with the powder and shaded along the edge with the dark red eyeshadow. Then I continued deepening the red on the eyes. Now that everything's filled in, I'm taking a black paint on a small detail brush to darken and define all of our initial outlines. I'm rounding out all the corners just a bit, and again, these lines don't need to all be pretty and even and perfect. You want to create thick and thin areas as well as some rough and kind of wavy and jagged edges. Then for just the left brow, I'm using a dark red liquid lipstick and applying that using a small angled flat brush. I'm following the natural shape of my brow, just thickening and sharpening it up a little, and I'm also adding in some light feathery strokes at the inner part of the brow to create the look of little hairs. I'm cleaning up where needed, just using any leftover of that salmon cream color brush. For the other brow, I'm creating a similar shape, but I'm just using my usual brow pencil, again creating small hair-like strokes at the inner area. I'm then lining my lower waterline with a black gel pencil liner, using my finger to gently smudge that along the lower lash line. I'm tightlining my eye as well as lining along the top lash line, really trying to make sure to really work it into the lashes so we don't have any skin tone peeking through. And again, I'm just using my finger to smudge that along the top lash line. I decided to be a bit adventurous this time and go for some winged liner. And I'm using the same pencil liner to lightly line out from the outer corner. I'm building up that wing by smudging and stippling on the liner to create a bit of a textured look, using my finger again to smudge and blend out a bit as I go. Then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other eye. Moving on to the body for now, I'm following all the same steps to map out, fill in, and define all the patches. So I'm starting out with the mauve eyeshadow, mapping out the rough sketch, creating a heart in the center of the chest, and lining around each of the shoulders. Using the same shades to fill in, this time I'm using a sponge for some of the larger areas, and I also decided to fill in my ear and the outer shape on my face with that salmon color to connect it down with the neck. I'm then using a smaller flat brush to get right along the outlines. I did decide to use a pink body paint for this larger area for ease of removal later, but it ended up matching the darker pink more than I had hoped, so I ended up going over it with the bright magenta pink cream color later anyway. I filled in the heart with the red, then the darker pink for my one arm. And here's where I added that brighter pink over top of the body paint, and then after I had applied all that, I'm again setting it all in place with the powder. I decided I wanted to fill in this other area with the salmon as well, so I applied that there, powdered, and then redefined my outline with the mauve shadow. Then as before, I'm shading along all the inside edges of each piece using the darker red for the red and dark pink, plum for the bright pink, and bright red for the salmon. I'm also taking my usual contour shade and contouring around the outside of the neck and shoulder along the inside and outside of my one arm, that's my own skin tone, and a bit around my forehead as well. Next, I'm applying a frosty Prismatic peach eyeshadow to the center of the lids and to the brow bones and inner corners, using my finger to pack it on and blend. Then again, as we did on the face, we're defining all of our mauve outlines with the black on a detail brush. I don't think there's much else to say. This look is a lot of work, but you follow a lot of the same steps for the majority of it, so I didn't want to include a bunch of the same steps over and over and over again, but I think you guys get it. I decided to create a little tear in the heart as well, and you could add more if you wanted to. So this is what we look like, all filled in and lined, and now using a medium gray body paint, we're creating all the stitches. I'm using a brush for these that is about the width that I want the stitches to be. So if you want thinner stitches, you can use a finer brush, or wider if you want thicker stitches. I'm giving each stitch, for the most part, a slight curve to give them a bit of dimension so they're not just sitting flat. I'm creating various sizes randomly over the design, some singles, some crossing, and you can do as many of these as you want to. But keep in mind that with each stitch you do, the more time you're going to need later when it comes detail time. So I went ahead and finished a majority of the stitching off camera and left this little section here to show you what I did. The process is going to be the exact same for every single stitch. I'm first going in with a black eyeshadow on a small detail brush and applying it to the ends of the stitch where it would be going into the skin. and then blending it in toward the center of the stitch, leaving that gray center to start creating more dimension. For crossing stitches, you'll want to decide which strand you want to be going over top. Then you're going to use the black eyeshadow to first define that stitch. I'm then shading a bit under that stitch to create a shadow onto the stitch that's underneath, and then again shading in from the ends. I'm also shading underneath the rest of the stitches to create shadow onto the skin. Now to highlight, I'm using a white body paint on another small detail brush and applying that to mainly that center area of each stitch. You only need a small amount of product for this, and I'm using my finger to tap it out to tone it down a bit, as well as using my brush that has leftover black eyeshadow on it to blend in from the ends if needed. After highlighting, the final step I'm doing is defining all the stitches with my black paint, again on a fine detail brush. I'm outlining each stitch as well as brushing and blending it in like we did with the black eyeshadow to darken the shadows. We want the ends to be the darkest with the center highlighted to accentuate the curve of each stitch so they look more three-dimensional. If you need to, you can go back in with your white to brighten up the highlights. Then I'm going back in with the same eyeshadows used to shade the pieces previously, and I'm using a lip brush to shade around the edges and stitches, leaving a small space in between so the skin looks a bit raised around the edges. I'm also using a fluffier eyeshadow brush to help blend it out. If you want to make this more intense, you can go in that little space and highlight with the white or another lighter color. But at this point in the night, I was just too tired and lazy to do that, so I decided the shading would suffice for me. You could also just build up the color to deepen the shadows more. I then sprayed the neck and chest with some setting spray and moved on to finish the face. I decided to do the lips at this point, and I'm using a deep red as a base. This is the same color actually that I used for the brow, and I'm applying that to the entire lip area first, and then I went in with a brighter red to highlight the center of the lips, lightly pressing the lips together and using my finger to tap out and blend the colors together. Then while the lips dry, as we shade it around the other pieces and stitches, we want to do the same on the natural skin tone areas, and for this I'm just using my typical contour shade again. Once the lips are dry, I'm adding a few more small stitches along the lip line just on this one side, following all the same steps as with the other stitches. I decided to contour my cheeks here as well, and I'm using that deep red eyeshadow to do so. I then went ahead and finished the rest of my stitches, popped in some contact lenses, as always from Samhain, and applied false lashes as well. I decided to blend the red eyeshadow on the right side up a bit and around the outside of the brow, and then darkened some of the shading a bit on the natural skin areas. Then I just touched up my lips a bit and added a bit of a sparkly red liquid lip over the center area, again using my finger to help tap out and blend. Then last but not least, I decided on this short and crazy style lace front from Princess Wig, which was pretty perfect. I think it was actually made for this look. But that's going to be everything, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to subscribe for more and check out all the details down in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.